And welcome back to Monday night. I'm Steve Leahy. This is Open Studio. How are you all doing? All right, we're just going to jump right in. You can't see it because it's down below there, but I've refilled my reducer. I'm going to use some 4021 again. I'm trying to jump back and forth between 4021 and 4011. Between the airbrush, I haven't noticed a gigantic difference. And I think that's just, again, I've said it before, I think that's just the way I operate with the reducers and the 4050 and all that fun stuff. But where I think I want to make sure that everything works fine is with the paintbrush. Because again, Createx doesn't intend it to be used with a paintbrush, so they're not testing it for that. So this gives me a chance to. We are just going to move right on. I covered it up before you could see it, but we're going to work on this little area right next to that building right there. Just move right back across. How is your Wednesday going? Really well, I hope. Where are we going? I'm going to put that's what I want right there. So with this one, let me get my finger so I can see it. There we go. So with this one, I think I'm going to, what am I picking out? I'm going to pick out the dark colors here because I think I can see more of those. And I know I have some light areas on there right now. So between the light areas I already have on there and then these new little black areas, yeah, we're ready to go. All right, there are two soapboxes that I want to kind of cover. One is a little bit quicker than another, so that's why I kind of picked two for this week, because one of them is still grinding my gears. So the first one is about patience. So DB made a great comment on, I think it was the last episode, and saying how patient I am. I appreciate that, but I don't look at it that way. I mean, I'm glad that that's the way it comes across, but I really don't feel like that with these paintings. I think the reason why is because I'm not looking at the whole project. I'm kind of just like, if I did that, I'd probably lose my mind. Like, it's been, 30 hours on this already, and still got a ways to go. So if I really thought about, I got to spend 40 hours or 45 hours working on this, I would probably lose my mind. I wouldn't have the patience that you have given me credit for. So I think what happens is I just kind of get lost in each little step. And I've never done any real hiking, but, oh, I'm screwing this all up. But I think after watching, I know I sound like a total, one of those people. After I've watched a bunch of videos about professional hikers, like people who do the Appalachian Trail and the Pacific, what's it called? The Pacific Trail too. And then the other, really long trails that are around the world. The impression that I get is that it's not about, well, it is about getting to the end of the trail. In the in the example of the Appalachian Trail, usually hikers start down south and then end it in Maine at the top of Mount, I know I'm going to butcher this, it's Katahdin. But in any event, they end at the top of a mountain and it's the end of the trail and it's a big deal and everything. And well, yeah, that's the goal. What I'm seeing from the videos, and I don't know, I got into watching these videos, not that I would ever do it, but it fascinated me growing up in Massachusetts, where the trail kind of passes through. I knew about it, but I didn't really understand, what people were doing. Like I didn't understand the reason why. But after one trip to, a place close to the trail, I came in contact with some hikers and it got me really interested in it. Again, not that I would ever do it, because that type of hiking is you have to have this, real built-in love for it, because it's a lot. But anyway, it's a long way to walk. It's up, pretty much almost the entire eastern coast. And the thing about it is any of those long hikes or whatever, it just seems like it's more about the journey. You know what I mean? They're not concentrating on, I've only got 400 miles left. You know what I mean? It seems like, to me, they're really just kind of, enjoying the journey and not only enjoying, but also with that, there's challenges that come with it and overcoming those challenges along the way, the people they meet, and I really feel that's similar to a painting like this for me. It's hanging out with all you guys. This has been amazing, and it's just like, yeah, it can be super repetitive sometimes, and when I've done these paintings by myself, you can kind of run into the like the kind of burnout mode. And when I've done these paintings for myself, I can always put them down. Now this painting has been a little bit different because I've been doing it in an open studio, so I have to work on it. But the upside is I only have to work on it for half an hour a week. So that, takes some of the sting out of, the monotony of it sometimes. But anyway, I don't look at this kind of painting as a patience thing. I need more patience when I do like a commission for someone that I don't necessarily care about the subject, which sounds terrible, but it's true. It's something that's important to someone is not necessarily important to me, and that's fine. It doesn't change the way I approach it and the way I attack it, but I don't have the same, the same love for it that person does. I should have got my Dremel out for this because there's some cool little Dremel-y type things, but I'll try to remember to do that at some point so I can show you how that works. But yeah, so I appreciate the comment, DB. I'm glad it comes across that I have a lot of patience with this, but I really don't look at these paintings like that, which is great. Because again, if I didn't like doing them, there's no way you can do them. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think there's anyone who can just say, okay, I want to paint really small, intricate landscapes, and I know it's going to take me 40 hours to do, but I want to get it done in an hour. That's just not realistic. So, like I said, I don't think I would end up doing it if it was a bother. I didn't mention it, but also you can see there's some cutout down here and there's some cutout over here. I make a bunch of copies, but that's nice because I can use them for different things. Like I don't have to waste a copy on every single different spot. Just got to make sure they're far enough away from one another. Oh, almost pulled the microphone off. That's not good. So that's it. So that's my deal with patience. Yes, like I said, sometimes you do have to have patience with it. It's just kind of the way that it works. But for the most part, I feel pretty good about them, and I don't really have to worry too much about it. All right, so I've already got a couple of these things already painted. You can see that they're dark through the cutout, which is fine. Oh, do I still blacken this? I do. I bet I do. Yeah, I do. Good. All right, so the other soapbox, and this keeps popping up, and I'm going to bring it up every time because this one grinds my gears a lot. So if you are doing, I'm not only going to go with art, I'm talking about anything. So if you're going to get into something, whether it's a hobby or whatever, well, let's talk about art first. If you're going to do this type of stuff, and you're especially going to sell this stuff or try to sell it, or no, not even try to sell it. Even if you want this stuff to last, you have to understand what's going to make this last. So my gripe is for people that don't spend the time to worry about what they're painting on. I've seen artists just completely ignore, for instance, if I do this painting on a piece of newsprint, it won't be here in 50 years, no matter how well you take care of it, because newsprint is cheap paper. It's going to disintegrate over time. There's, even with the greatest of care, it is, unless it's hermetically sealed, no interaction with air or whatever, it's gonna fall apart over time. So if you're going to be doing stuff like this, and especially if you're going to be giving it to someone or taking someone's money for it, you have to think about what's underneath all this. That not only includes the substrate, but it also includes the paint You have to pay attention to that because it's not fair. It's not fair to the person getting the stuff. And I've seen a lot of people selling things that are just not going to last because they didn't take the time to give their client or the person that's getting the object the respect that it deserves, or the person that respect, really, because that's what it boils down to. Because if you, like I said, you do something on a piece of paper, someone loves it and buys it, they hang it on their wall, they don't know, they don't know what archival means. They don't know there's acid in that paper. They don't know that they shouldn't hang it in direct sunlight. And in a year and a half, everything that's red and blue in that is gone. You know what I mean? Because you use cheap paint that has not, pigments that aren't light fast. You put it on paper. You didn't know that paper is one of the most fragile substrates you can work on. So you didn't pass that information on to the person that got it. It's just not fair. You know what I mean? And it like I said, for me, this permeates everything. If you do anything for anyone, you really want to make sure that, you understand it enough that you're taking care of the person you're doing it for. If you're drawing a picture for your grandma, and it's like just a card or whatever, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, just doing something that's a little bit more real. You know what I mean? So, like I said, it grinds my gears hard if it's a professional, and I see people doing stuff that I know either they know better or even worse, they don't know better. I mean, if you don't know any better, I don't know, there's no excuse for that either. Really, there isn't. Because if you get into the practice of, getting your stuff out there, you have to know. You have to take that responsibility. So that's my soapbox for the other soapbox for today. And I mean, again, people don't think about it, but you have to think about it. You do these things. I see these people who are getting a lot of money for their work, and I know from just experience that the way that they set up their substrate, that the paint's going to fall off, or the paint's not even going to last. And that's really bad. That's really, really bad. All right, so what are we doing here? I've got this gray building done. That's that guy there. That little building, this little black building here is what I'm going to start with, because I can see it. So this little building right here, because I know where this building is, and I can see this building. So the little white building between and all that fun stuff. So we're gonna knock this out. This paint is terrible. I should put new paint down, but damn it, we gotta do some stuff. We gotta get some stuff done. So again, and I learned the hard way, when I started. I mean, I was lucky because I went to school. So, when you learn from other people that have already been through it, it definitely gives you a leg up. You learn from their mistakes, which is great, and they can guide you. So when I was an illustration major, all we used was illustration board. Now was the common thing to use for what I was doing, because believe it or not, in the old days, when you did an illustration, they would take a photograph of it, and then they no longer cared about the actual original art. That belonged to the artist. The company was just in it for that, that image. So it was really, it was a good. It was really just a good substrate to work on, because it's easy to cut. You can, you're oftentimes dealing with weird sizes. And for those who don't know, illustration board is just a really high quality paper that's mounted on an acid-free cardboard. I say cardstock. It wasn't cardstock. It's a cardboard. So it's really rigid, but it's still paper. Again, and it didn't matter because. Again, we were in it to just get the image done for people, so that they could do their ad, and that was it. But as I got into more, once I realized that I didn't really want to do illustration at the time in the late 80s, a lot of or all commercial illustration was changing over to digital, And I just wasn't into, I mean, I liked it, but I wasn't into digital art. I did a lot of, technical drawing. I had an affinity for that, so I worked doing a lot of digital technical drawings and stuff like that. But I wasn't into doing, any kind of, digital art. So I kind of transferred over to just flat out painting, because I love telling stories with my stuff, and it just seemed like a good way to do it. I could tell stories still, but I wasn't bound by, making it an ad for someone. So when I did that, I was like, okay. I mean, there were fine artists that were still working on illustration board. Excuse me. But really it wasn't the normal thing. You know what I mean? Fine artists were working on, prepared board, which is hardboard with some sort of ground on it, like gesso, or they're working on canvas. So I did a lot of stuff on canvas. I did a lot of stuff on canvas, but I was still working on illustration board until I found a better product, and that was the hardboard, which was nice. And again, it took me a while to figure out what surface really was going to work best. But ironically, through the motorcycle industry, I realized that aluminum panels were a really good way to go. And again, it's all about being archival. An aluminum panel or one of those prepared boards, they're going to last for a really, really long time. That's what they're meant to do. Aluminum panels the same way. The aluminum panel's not going to go anywhere. For a while, I worked on titanium because I was really pushing that envelope where I'm like, okay, if aluminum's good, titanium is used in aerospace and medical. So I'm doing this the wrong way. This thing right here, I started painting it again right here, so that's not correct. So let's jump back to that. There we go. So what's going on down there? Oh no, they are there, they're just gray. Okay. But again, it's all a learning curve. Like I said, titanium to me was better, and I'm like, yay. And titanium is amazing. But the idea behind titanium is that, nothing sticks to it at all. So that includes paint. So I was, wrestling with that, trying to use titanium, and worked it out. But I'm like, in the end, does that really matter? Like, it was fun to tell people that the paintings were done on titanium. But in the end, it was really just not a sales pitch, but it's really, what it boiled down to. It was vastly better than aluminum. It was just a cool thing to be painting on. Let me make sure I'm doing the right thing here. That is that. So after the titanium thing, I jumped back to aluminum again. Because aluminum was readily available. Titanium is when you know where to look. But the aluminum was readily available, and it was easy to cut and all that fun stuff. So I just jumped back to aluminum. But again, it boils down to, if someone gets something that I made, I want it to last forever. I don't ever want someone to be like, oh, this thing fell apart. The paint changed color because the substrate underneath is leaking acid, literally, into the paint, changing its color, which is what happens when you paint on raw wood. So if you grab a piece of plywood and you slap a painting on it, in a couple of years, all the tannin and lignin that's in that cheap plywood is going to, first off, you run the risk of having your paint just fall off, because that acid will push the paint off. Plus, it's, most plywood sucks, so it's not, it's not archival. It's not meant for that. So there's a lot of stuff in it that will help push that thing around and make the paint not stay on there. And then the final thing is, it'll change the color of the painting. The acid will leak into the painting, and then the colors will change. So that's just one. Again, I was talking about paper. Paper is the same way. If it's not cared for, paper can be a real big problem. Now, you'll see that a lot of people do work on paper. And again, and that's fine, but you need to know those things. You need to know that it can only be displayed in low light. You know, it has a certain light level that it can't be exceeded. That, you know, if it does, then you run the risk of again having it fade or having the paper yellow, even if it's acid free. It's just something you need to know. So, for instance, pastel artists always work on paper. I shouldn't say that. There is prepared board for pastel artists too, but the majority of the pastel artists will work on a toned paper. And again, if you ask a pastel artist, they will be the first one to tell you how their work needs to be displayed. You know, we've come a long way with special glass, you know, glazings for on top of the works, which will help protect it. But again, that's your job. You know, it's like if you decide to fix your buddy's car, but you're not really sure about it, and you use crappy parts, and you don't really know what you're doing. Yeah, when you're done, it starts up and it runs, but you know, when he goes to puts the brakes on, and you know, you used $2 hose instead of, you know, the right lines for that brake system, and the thing blows apart. You know, obviously there's a safety issue there. It's a little bit different than art or whatever, but it's the same kind of thing. You know, you need to be responsible for what you're doing. So that's my super crazy soapbox. And again, this is going to come up again and again because it does. I see it all the time, and it just makes me crazy. Especially, you know, like I said, I see a lot of really, really high-end art that's like makes me shake my head. You know, like how do they even do this? Like, how do people, you know, first, how does a gallery or you know, a group feel good about, you know, representing an artist that just has no idea, you know, what they're doing as far as keeping things in order, as far as, you know, this archival stuff, you know, making it last, making it worth it. And again, and it falls on the artist too. Like, just, you know, if you're getting a lot of money for stuff that you're doing, you got to make sure you're doing the right thing, you know? So that is my big fat soapbox. And it goes on and on. Like when I see a really expensive that I know like that, like someone paid a lot of money for, you know, that is supposed to be a, you know, like a known artist. And I see that it's framed like a 3-year-old did it. You know, that really like makes me crazy. And I know it shouldn't, because what do I care, right? But it does. It's like, so you have this piece of art that, you know, has sold for a lot of money, and it's just treated like total garbage. Like it's, whoever framed it had no idea what they were doing. And trust me, this happens a lot. You know, it's like some artists are just all about the work, and then they pass it off, and then, you know, someone else frames it, or the gallery that represents them frames it, and it's garbage. And that sucks, you know, because again, the person that's trusting you with that art doesn't have to know about good framing. They don't have to know about good substrates or good paint. You know what I mean? The collector really doesn't have to know that. It's great if they do, but it really shouldn't be their responsibility. That's the responsibility of the artist. Just as if you were to go into a restaurant, you know, you order your meal, you trust that the ingredients are fresh and they are the correct ingredients, and that's not your responsibility. Yes, it's certainly your responsibility. I'm going to do a little bit of scratching on this one here. It's certainly your responsibility, you know, if the stuff is bad and you know it. However, you know, you go in with the assumption that people are doing things right. So it's no different with this stuff. And I'm going to keep saying it. You know, even in the beginning, well, why get into this and say, okay, yeah, you know what, I'm just starting out. I get it. If you're practicing and you want to airbrush on some paper and stuff, just to get, you know, your skills down or whatever, that's great. You know, you don't have to worry about that. But if you start getting into it and you start producing stuff that you're going to hold on to, that's when you have to make that shift. And you know how I feel about tools. You know, I was brought up that if you're going to do a job, you get the right tool right out of the gate. I was fortunate I had a dad that, you know, respected that end of it quite a bit. So I was able to, you know, I was able to learn that early on. And it is never, like, I've never said, oh man, I wish I hadn't spent the money on that, you know, that tool or that paintbrush or that airbrush. You know what I mean? Look at it this way. Even if you want to get into airbrushing, you spend a good amount of money on it. You try it for a month and then say, yeah, I hate it. There is a resale value for a brand named piece of equipment that has not been used. There is not a resale value for garbage, you know, and that's true with everything. Now, and I get it, you know, if you want to fix cars, you know, run out and get, you know, a $20,000 set of tools to start. But, you know, with this kind of stuff, with art, it's never really like that. You know what I mean? Yeah, you can spend that over a course of setting everything up, but you don't need to set your goals there yet. If you want to, like I said, I've never spent money on a good quality piece of equipment that I've ever regretted, you know? So that's true. And you know what? Again, that's really, believe it or not, that's paying it forward as well. If I have good quality equipment and I have very little downtime, I can produce more art. You know, I can get someone's painting done by their deadline because I'm not wrestling with garbage, you know? So that all is the same thing. It shows a sign of respect to what you're doing. Sorry. I get so fired up about this. How are we doing on time? Good. We got about 3 minutes. We're just kind of plugging along. This is great. I've got all this laid out, so we're just going to keep going with this next week as well. And a lot of this stuff in here is really tiny. You know, it's really like bits and pieces. So there's a road though. Where is that coming out of? It comes out of, oh, it's up here. Okay, I'm good. Yeah, this neighborhood is very like bits and pieces. So, which is what we were dealing with, which is nice because I can just kind of impressionistically put a lot of this in, and while it seems like a cheat, it's really what's going on there. It's a bunch of gray and white, you know, buildings. So with this, you know, I still try to keep in mind that these are the tops of buildings, so chances are, you know, most of them are going to be little tiny horizontal tick marks, sometimes vertical, depending. But I want to be careful not to do anything, you know, too diagonal, you know, outside of what that block would be. Because again, that your recognition, your pattern recognition, even on something that's small, will pick that up. And again, talked about that before. You know, the brain loves to see patterns. You know, and if it's a bad pattern in a painting like this, you know, people will pick it up. So we'll keep everything kind of horizontal here a little bit, maybe a couple little things, and I'm just kind of glancing over. You guys can't see it because it's off the page to the right here, but I have a photocopy as well. I do have, again, I have the reference photo like you guys have, but I'm not really, you know, I'm looking at it to kind of figure out what's going on. If I run into a, you know, like a bump, like whatever this thing is right here, which it isn't anything really, it's just a bunch of stuff. So but I'm excuse me, but I'm trying not to like look at the blown up version of this too much, because again, it'll make me paint things in an incorrect scale. I'll be looking, you know, and I'll be transferring it from the reference photo, and that's not going to work out. That's good. Yeah, this paint has had it. I did actually replace the parchment since the last episode, but I've been painting so much I filled it all up again. don't ask me to tell you what any of these buildings are. They're too small. So I won't put that on editing, Steve, to try to figure out what these buildings are. This one here I could probably figure out, but I'm not going to. If you guys want to figure it out and drop it in the comments, you guys would be the Google Map heroes. Yeah, I just want to, I know we might run a little bit long, but I just want to kind of get this block done. This will be a big thing, because then we can just start right back on the other side. This little section is definitely going to take some airbrushing too, so we're going to break it all out for this one. What's going on above that? Nothing. Just little bits and pieces. I love it. We are also getting to the point where I think it's somewhere along the line here. I'm going to hit this whole thing with a little bit of Otterborn Sealer Transparent. So I've got a lot of the edge done all along here, and I don't want to fix it. So so if I spray that, give it a good like couple coats right along the edge, I can be sure that I'm not going to wear off the edge as I move back across here. All right, that looks really good. Will this black work? Probably not. I'm not going to risk it. The reason why I said that is because the black that I used to block this in is a little bit thicker, and it's not going to have very much finesse. So I'm not going to take the chance on that. I'm going to put the thinner black in the smaller brush. There we go. And we will finish up this block. Oh, that's nice how it just kind of bleeds into this bottom section we already did. That is some wonderful stuff. All right, so again with this just takes that, you know, the paintbrush and breaks up that, or a paintbrush look, and breaks up that pattern again. You know, I don't want everything nice and even and, you know, repetitive. So the airbrush really does a good job. It puts these little micro fades in on some of the buildings, and it really like just kind of helps it along like that, which looks great. That's it. Easy peasy. Actually, I went kind of dark with that. So what to do in that instance is put a little bit more light in it. And I know we've gone a little bit over, but I appreciate you guys hanging out. Again, you know, the idea behind this is if I leave this till next week, I might forget it. I might forget that, oh, I wanted to put a little bit of light in there, you know, a little, since I hit it a little bit too hard with the airbrush. I want to put a couple little brights in there to mix it up. So there's a chance that, you know, I'll forget that, and we'll move on to the next section, and then, you know, I'll realize it after I clear it that, you know, I wanted to do that. So this just gets it off the plate. You know what I mean? Lovely. That's what I'm talking about. All right. So let me back this up and we will check out the whole thing. And here it is. Holy smoke, kids. We're like actually doing it. If you've seen the Manhattan painting that I did, this painting is more than that one. That was my kind of magnum opus as far as cityscape paintings. This one is the next stage. It's just the amount of crazy detail that's going on in this is great, and that's important to me because I want to up the stakes each time. So the Tokyo painting is definitely that. Again, I keep saying it, but you can see it. Really, we just kind of blasted across that in just about 2 episodes. That's what's going to be. We're just going to kind of keep nailing it. There's a nice tall building in here too, which sets things off. And I can't wait to get to the part where we get to like fog it over. That's going to be both horrifying for you and exciting at the same time, because we literally like missed over a lot of this. So that's, you know, that's fun. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this episode, my angry rant. If you did, just hit that like and subscribe. That'd be wonderful. If you'd like to be a supporting member here, that would be unbelievable. Like these lovely people, you will get a 10% discount on my site all the time, as well as early access to the time-lapse video that comes out every Tuesday. And that's what I got. So you guys are amazing. Thank you so much for hanging out with me on this lovely Wednesday. And I will see you guys next week. Have a great one.